Natalia. Well, sorry, you're up.
Is your microphone? It's muted.
Could you please send the data again?
Yes. So right now I'm sending the link of the data that you can just, can you guys see my screen, the one that I'm in now? Yes. So in the link, the second link that I send you, will show this when you open it. So you can just like do right click and then copy, or you can, and then save it wherever your directory is in your, the directory that you are using for your session right now. So for example, I have it saved. So let's see, I can put copy. I cannot, I don't have to select. Oh, sorry, I was selecting save as. Yes, as a CSV, Kevin, yeah. So you put a right click and you put save as. You can also put, Legana knows, I think it's Control S, Control save. And then it will direct you where you want to save it. And so for me, not my visa, it will be in this folder that is called R Wasawasa and then data. But it depends where you guys are going to save your data, is the directory where you want to put it. Does that make sense? If you have any questions, let me know. So I already, oh yeah, so it's Command S in computers. So the other link is the link from the software carpentry, the one that I will be following the code from. So I can send it again. So I will be using the code that is here. So if you guys want to type it or just copy paste it, you can do it. Okay, maybe I should start. I don't know if... Well, yeah, I think it's not too long, but let's see how much can I talk. So there are, like, when you get your data, usually you get it from, let's say, a company if you're working with sequencing data, or if it is you are an ecologist and you're taking the, like doing a survey in transects, you are the one who is going to put the data in a database. So there are two types of arrangements, they call them. The long, that it will mean that each column is a variable and each row is about an observation. So if you go to the link of the software carpentry that I gave you, they have an example here of long. So you have each column here is like its own variable, and each row is, let's say, unique, like there is no repetition of type of data. On the other hand, the wide arrangement of data will be that in each column you can have the same, how do they phrase it? The same type of data. So for example, in this example, it will be the ID, it's the unique that you see here in the long, but then A1, A2, and A3, A can be, I don't know, let's say reefs. So A1, A2, and A3, they are the same type of data, like they are, the three of them are reefs in this case, let's say. Or maybe they are all, I don't know, the same treatment, it could be as well. Same treatment. So A1, A2, and A3 is the same type of data. So that's when you will have like a wide, I have to stop saying it, a wide arrangement of format. So one of the really tricky things sometimes is to define what is your variable in your data and what is your observation. So I say that it's tricky because sometimes we have like a mixed amount of data, and depending on what we want to analyze, that is going to make the difference on what you are calling an observation or a variable. So if we go to the, so that's what we are going to work on today, like trying to, you receive a data that is long, but in your analysis, you need it in a wide format. So you will have to modify the format in order to get it in the right shape for your analysis. So for that, we are going to use, in this case, dplyr. So if you don't have the package installed, you have to run this code that is installed package dplyr. But because I have it, and it's already installed. And then also we are going to use tidyr. Tidyr is the one that we are going to use. dplyr is what we use with Kevin in the last session. For me, right now they are interchangeable, but I think they are not. And then the gapminder data that is like you can download it as well, because we might use it. We are going to use it, sorry, not might. And then just to, well, let's do that for now. So the first challenge that they give is that to try to figure out what type of data is gapminder. So for that, I don't know if you remember that we can put a structure to see how is our data structure. So any hints? Oh wait, there is things in the chat.
Let's see, Natalia.
Yeah. What did you say? Sorry.
We can only see your browser, not your RStudio.
Ah, shit. Okay. Thank you for that. How can I change it? Maybe I can put like that. Can you see now? Yeah, sorry. So all the things that you miss were here. I was typing this. Like we have to upload dplyr, tidyr, gapminder. So any ideas of what type of that? Oh wait, maybe I should wait to everybody to install the. And if you don't have your the packages installed, you have to run this first line. Okay, is everybody in the same page? What about Karens? They don't hear me. I know, yes, they do. It's okay, cool. So, Yeah, what do you think, what type of data do you think that Gapminder is? For me, when I do a structure, it doesn't really tell me much. I don't know, I cannot really visualize it. So I always like to put like the head. Can you see my R now, right? Yes, okay. And then like this kind of makes more sense to me. So remember that long means each column is a variable and each row is an observation. Lorenzo says that it's a white. Any other? Somebody wants to contradict him? Yeah, so actually it's a mix of the two of them because we have, how do I explain? Because, for example, Asia, it's kind of, we have several observations. So that means that that each row will kind of repeat. Let me see what they said. Maybe they explain better than I do. Yeah, so it says that we have 3 IDs that are kind of unique. That is continent, country, and year. And then like continent, country, and year. And we have the observation variables that are 3. Yeah, it has more than 1 data point. So that is a population, life expectancy, and gdpPercap. So when I was preparing this, I realized that every other data set that we use, I think it's a mix between the 2 things. So that's why sometimes it's tricky to define what is a variable and what is an observation. Well, in this part is easy because, I mean, they are all numbers, but sometimes there are categories, let's say, so that's when things get like a bit more complex. But anyhow, like what we need to try to understand is what is our shape of our data, and then from there, in which shape we want it to do the analysis. So in my experience, every other package want the data in another format or in another shape, or so it's always useful to go to the manuals of the packages and see what is the example data, and when that example data you shape your data as you need it. So we are going to now try to transform from wide format to long. So the Gap data minder that is in the library is like a very already slightly curated data. So that's why we need to use the other data that I asked you to download. So maybe I can share again in case. So everybody, so then we can load this data in our studio or R to work with it. And like if you want to copy what I write, maybe call it the same. that is gdpminder white. And so for me, I'm already in my environment, in my directory. So I just have to put in which folder, in my main directory, in which folder my document will be, and it will load. Everybody has the data already loaded, like in your environment. I think I haven't. So I don't know if you remember how Kevin is like the master of typing. And I think like the only way to get there is like typing every other thing that you do and try not to copy the code, because also then you will get more familiar on using the tab tool. So the first thing here, now that we have, everybody has the data, maybe I will wait. If you don't have the data, let us know, because otherwise it's like you will not be able to follow up. Okay, so the first thing to do is to see our data, right? To see how many, what is our data conform of. So again, the structure is the thing to go with, the code. So we see here that we have 142 observations and 38 variables. We see a little bit how this is different from our original gdpminder data, that we have like the variable type and the year in the name of each column. And as I said before, maybe this head makes more sense for some people. And so here you see that you have your continent for each continent, like the country. And then for each country, you have like a lot of columns that are each observation type, GDP, and attached to the year. So this is like actually like a very wide format. If I could like make it bigger in my screen, it will be like super long, super wide, the opposite, super wide. So in order to make this data back to what it was before, like make it long, we will use in tidyr, we will use this function that is called pivot longer. So if we call our new data long, this is when we are using the piping that Kevin explained last week. So which data we want to transform, that will be gdpminder white, right? And then the pipe, that is this symbol, and the function that is pivot longer. So in pivot longer, what we will need to tell it is which columns do we want the function to pivot, and how do we want to call these columns. So again, using what we learned from last week, we know that we can select columns with the function starts with from, well, it says tidyr. And then we know that, or, oh wait, maybe I should. So what I wrote is here. Can you see my screen? Like I eliminated, but I didn't eliminate. It's just here. If you want to copy it. So our columns will, the GDP one will start with GDP. All of them will start with the same like name, and then it will have the year, of course. Then for life expectancy, it will be life expect, and from population, it will be pop. So when we want to name the columns in pivot longer, we don't have to write every single name of every single column. We can just set, we want to pivot all the columns that start with these elements. So so we say that, and then we have to give it a name to all these columns, because we are going to pivot it, right? So it's going to create a new column with all the information that of the names of the columns that we are pivoting it. So R needs a new name for this new column. So we say that 2, and this is just a made up name that they call it observe type. And then, as you can see here, each one of your columns has information. So when you pivot, what is I hope you're wondering what is going to happen with the information that each one of my columns have. And so that's, R is going to make a column with the name of all of your columns, plus a column with all the information that the original columns had. So all that information is like called value. So we use the value to command to tell it in which column we wanted to put it. And so again, observe value is just a made up thing. Like you can put whatever you want. And then you can check your gap. Again, so here you can see that we have again like 5,000 rows and 4 columns. And again, if I do the head, you can see that our continent, country are exactly the same because we didn't say in our code to do anything with those 2 columns. But then in observe type year, you have like all the all the column names that you had in your white in this observe type, and then all the values corresponding to that column in the observe values. And so we, just in this line of code, we managed to flip all of it, which is quite cool. I don't know if you have tried to do that in Excel. It's like, it takes ages. Did everybody get that part? let me know in the chat or. Did you load the programs? Calls not found. Are you sure you're typing well? Population, life expectancy, GDP. You know, so the bracket sometimes is a dash between calls. No, it's unequal. Sorry, maybe I have to. It's unequal. Yeah, it's just saying we have several columns that we want to pivot. Okay, cool. So then another way to do the same thing instead of putting starts with is to use the minus command. So we will say, let me check. Is this the next part? Because sometimes you have a lot of columns that you want to select, but there are just some that you don't want to pivot. So in this case, the only one that we don't want to pivot will be continent and country, right? So we do the same, like it's exactly the same. The columns. And yeah, for example, here we have like, it can bring mistakes. If we have to type a lot, it's always better to try not to type that much. So we use the minus, I'm pointing at the screen. we use the minus command to say we don't want to pivot continent and we don't want to pivot country. And then it will be the same names too. I also will call it observe type. Then values too. So if you run this, it will give you exactly the same as before. So yeah, sometimes you want to pivot all the table, except one variable. So it's much easier to use this type of coding. So when you are when you are like shaping your data, it's better to like make a little drawing or what do you want the data to look like first. Okay, so as you can see, this data is a bit ugly because we have this table, because we have the population and it's attached the year. So we have two types of information in one column. And so that might bring issues when we would like to make graphs or make analysis per year, for example. We will not be able because it will be attaching to one variable. So for that, we use dplyr to change it. So again, which data we want to modify. In this case, it will be the gap long data. What is this thing here? No. Yeah, so we want to separate. So for people that is just starting in R, is like make sure that you take advantage of the prompts that R gives you every time that you type something, because that makes also, it makes it like easier to code. So in separate, we need to say which column do we want to separate, that in this case will be observation type year, and into which columns do we want to separate it to. So for us, it will be observation type again, that it will be life expectancy, GDP. Well, where was I? Happen when you are in the and in the other column that we will separate the population or the observed type, and the other column we want it to be year, right? So we will call it just year. And how do we want to separate it? This is the easy part because of how we analyze, we shape the data. It has an underscore between it. So this is very important. If you are making your database, make sure that every entry is like completely standardized, and you will save a lot of time. So it will tell separate every time that you see an underscore. So what R will do is that it will go to your table, it will read, it will go to your column, it will start reading this line, it will see the underscore, and it will send all the information that it just read to the new column. Then it will go after the underscore, read all the information after the underscore, and it will put it to the column. And so if we see now, we have column that is observation type just with the observation type, and then a column just with the years, and well, your values. Is everybody following? I hope. So what they mentioned here as well is that, okay, we did all this modification. And then if you jump straight to, I don't know, try to make a an analysis or whatever, maybe your observation value, or in this case, for example, the particular case here is that the year is a character and not actually like a number. So you always, after you modify the data as you want, you have to see that the class of each of your variables is the correct one that you need in your analysis. And in order to change that, if any of them is not the class that you want, you can do it in this way. So like here. So you name the data that you want, and with the $sign, you can select any of the columns in this data. In this case, in this example, we select year, and then it's like that symbol is like we want to transform it as an integrate in this case. And what do we want to transform? And it will be the same thing here. So if we do, you can see now that your year is a integrate and it's not a character anymore as it was before. Yeah, is everyone is okay with it? Has everybody managed to make the long and separated? Yes, no, perhaps. So again, I think that Kevin showed last time, but all these commands are also in the cheat sheets that you can find in help cheat sheets, and then dplyr. There is a ggplot. Yeah, so any questions? No? Should I pass to the challenge? So the challenge says using the gap long data that we just created, calculate the mean life expectancy, population, and gdpPercap for each continent. So the hint here is to use group by and summarize functions. So this is like purely dplyr lesson. I think that an important thing to remember is that summarize will actually create another data set. So maybe keep that in mind. I will give maybe 5 minutes and then I will pass to the, yeah, because I still have, well, the equal is not that important. See that in the meanwhile, I can fix this. Yes. Anyone has managed to? I feel there is more than one way to do this, but not using summarize. Maybe I think I forgot to mention the sep here in the separate. Doesn't have to be always an underscore. You can put a space, like tab or comma, depending how your data is shaped. And then I think that regular expressions also can be fit in this function. Yeah, because you're calling, yes, will a comma work with a CS? Yes, because you're just telling inside the column is the information that is inside the column, not between columns. So when you specify the column, it starts reading the information inside the column in each row. Starts scanning. Okay, so for this challenge, what we have here is that first, of course, we tell which data we want to use to get the means or the information. After we pipe it, and we need to group it by continent and by observation type as well. Because if you just group it by continent, it will not, I think it has an error. I think I try it, and maybe you guys can try it. It shows an error because it doesn't really know, or you get a mistaken mean because it's mixing the observed types. And we use another pipe to tell, okay, this data that is grouped, I want to summarize it. And how I wanted to summarize it, I want the means of this column, the values of this column. So, and as I said, I think that the important, what happened? I think that the important bit here is that summarize creates a new data set. So if we go to gaplong, you see here that it has modified, it actually creates a new data set with the continent, observation type, and then the means of each observation type per continent. So you have to make sure that you don't call this gaplong again, because otherwise you will lose your gaplong data frame. Okay, I will move to the white because I think that we have 10 minutes, maybe. There might be more questions there. And this is again, it's purely dplyr. We are not actually wrangling the data. Okay, so in order to get from long to wider, the function that we use in this case is pivot wider. So we will try to get from our gap long to our gap wide that we had before. And so just as to check, we want to know the dimensions of our gap long. So you have an idea of how many columns, and so we see that there are like 5,000 and more to 5 columns. So if you end up with more rows, then you know that you have made a mistake, if that makes sense, because in the pivot wider will increase the number of columns, but will decrease the number of rows. So we will go with our, they call it gap normal. We're just giving it a name to the data that we want to modify. And then the data that we want to modify will be the gap long. We pipe it, and in this case, we use the function that is pivot wider, that is here. And in this case, we need to tell from which column we want to name our new columns, if that makes sense, because we had our like one column that has like information inside, but we will put all that information in the name of the new columns. So from where we want to pick up that information, that will be the names from. And in this case is observed type. And then for the values from where do we want to populate all these columns, it will be values from, and then we want it to be observed values. So now if we check the dimensions of our gap normal, we see that we have less rows and more columns. So we kind of like made it work. Anybody has any question here? It's just like doing the opposite. Sometimes just to modify your data, you will have to go from long to wide to long, like more than once, because you want to extract information, and the way to extract information with these functions will allow you to extract it only if they are in a column shape, or only if they are as rows. So it's important to understand it. I usually don't use dplyr. I use reshape. I don't know if anybody else use reshape. And strings. And so the names of our gap normal of each column is are these ones, and then our gap normal should be, let's put that ahead. Should be exactly the same as our gap minder. So this is our gap normal. It should be exactly the same as our gap minder. But you'll see, no, it's working. Oh, it works. Before I had like population per million. I don't know why, when I ran this script yesterday, but okay. So it works. So we basically have like make it wide and then reshape it again to the original shape. Once we are doing this several times for our data, it is like good practice, I guess, to make sure that we haven't lost any information. And so for that, we can compare it like just like this, right? And just by seeing you, we can see that the order of the columns are not the same. Out from where? Like that. Así. What do you want to see? Maybe that's the issue. I don't know why I have, anybody knows why
I don't know if it,
here.
maybe I know it's my screen, but I can only see a little bit of your screen. Like, no, I can't see the full screen, but it might be, I don't know. It's probably just, yeah.
Can you see it now?
No.
No?
No.
Maybe I can stop sharing it. Share it again. No?
You know, I can see. I cannot see your environment, but now I can see your R marked down, like what you're typing.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe it's because I have too much shit here. Oh, too much stuff. Sorry, I shouldn't say.
Thank you.
No worries. So again, this is just to make sure that you haven't lost any information or that you haven't added a column by mistake or things like that. So wait, this is because I found yesterday that I had this issue. Okay, so to make sure that the names are in the same order before we do this all equal. So the all equal will let us know if things are exactly the same, but because it will compare each column to its, how do you say, counterpart. So if we do all equal here, it might not work. Maybe we can try it. You might say that there are a lot of cap normal, a lot of mistakes. Yeah, so it says that, yeah, there is a mismatch of the, so we know that this is because our columns are not in the same order. So in order to do that, there are, this is kind of a quick way to do it, but I think that when I used to do that, I used to do it the long way. That is like I selected the thing, all the columns one by one, but that is not a good, it's not very efficient. But if you forget this, maybe, I mean, there are options in tidyr that will allow you to do this. So now we run again the all equal. Ah, it's still shit. Of normal names. Did I put gun miner? Yes. Well, what you want to get from this is a true. When it is actually true, Didn't work. Actually don't know. Oh, I have, why do I have to gap normal? Maybe this is the issue. Yeah, I have some kind of duplicate. Anybody gets through. See, I have two gap. How is this possible? How can I have two data frames with the same name? One is with an A. This is why if you are dyslexic, it's an issue. Coding can be a problem. Okay, so number, which one is the one that is exactly the same? Gapminder. Current factor. Yeah, well, this is GDP. Anybody gets through in this?
Natalia,
Yeah.
we don't, but the variable types are different. And so I'm guessing that maybe things that
The
are
what, sorry?
The variable types.
Yeah, the variable types, yeah, I get that. That is normal. But what about the mean relative difference?
They might be different if it's like numeric versus integer.
I see. There you go, Jacob, solve it. Oh, sorry, I think I'm over the 12. So anyway, with this, we managed to bring our like from long to wide, and then the rest was to bring it again to back to wide. So to be honest, it's exactly the same things, like just trying to play with the dplyr and with tidyr and use the same command of pivot or to wider and then pipe it. So well, if people have time, I can go a bit quicker in this because it's easy. So they do like we do here a temporary file just to show how the data is changing with our information. So we want to get back to the wide format that we had before. So in this case, what we're doing in this variable ID is that we are like unifying continent and country, and we can do that with this function that is called unite. It's kind of a good thing to keep in mind because sometimes we need to compress columns in order to change them again. Then the next step is to unite the observed type as year as we had it before. So we run this part, and then we get the head again. You can see that our variable, it was observed types before, but the name now is variable names, is the GDP, and then underscore the year. And then finally, if we want to, we can put this command and this command in just one line and then pivot it. So we want to pivot wider. Remember that we want to bring the long to wide. So from the variable name, that it will be this one, like to have each column the observation type. And value from, it will be the observed value, that it will be the whatever information of the GDP or population of the life expectancy. So here what is showing is that we can actually reshape our data in just some lines of code and get everything kind of like anyone that can get our what is the wider new, or that our raw data will be able to modify it as we do. So here again, you can see that we have, as we had before, the GDP. And well, the last part, the challenge is to make it like stupidly long, but well, maybe we don't have so much time for that, but I can go through with you really quickly. So we wanted to format data by pivoting over countries, year, and the 3 metrics. So we need to have, the hint that they gave us is to have a data frame only with 5 rows. So for that, we need to unite all this information in one column that I call it smash. And after we unite all the information, we can pivot the table. So I will run it. This is again like the main things that is just to play and to show you like how much you can modify your data if you want. So here, each column has the observation type, the year, and the country, and then you have the information. Of course, you will have lots of NAs because, yeah, Algeria is not in Asia. And yeah, so this next part was just to separate the countries and continents, which, to be honest, I don't know what they made us unify them, because I tried, and you can just pivot wider without having this one united, like unified in one variable. And again, the all as equal, it's I mean, it's useful if you are manipulating your data a lot. And yeah, that's it. That's kind of what I have to say for the, so there are 2 main functions that I pivot longer and pivot wider. And inside of those functions, you can use dplyr as well to make modifications in your data. There are other packages that do that as well that I mentioned briefly. That is, I think it's a reshape. And I also use the strings to take information from my columns and move them to another one. And I try to understand why I use them. And I think it's because in with dplyr and tidyr, I will have to pivot and then pivot it again and then do another modification and then pivot it again like that, rather than with a reshape. I think you can extract information, even if they are in rows with regular expressions. So yeah, if anybody wants to know more about that, maybe we can have a session of Reshape. And yeah, that's it. Anybody has any question? I hope it was clear. Yeah, so next week, I think is Ramona next week, or is Lorenzo? You don't know?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know, but well, we will send like Kevin will send the email next time. Yeah,
Thanks,
I think it's
Natalia.
me on follow.
it's you.
Yeah, I think it's me. Maybe. Well, anyway, we'll check and then we'll send an email.
Okay, cool.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
Natalia. That was awesome. Thank you.
Bye bye. I hope it was helpful. Let me know if I was not clear.
No, you were clear.
Sometimes difficult. Okay.